Welcome to Qualify the Podcast. This is your host, Hassan. Few housekeeping rules before we start. Please like and subscribe to YouTube. Also, put any comments that you would like on. We'll be checking them all. Also, be mindful that we are on Spotify and Stitcher. The community is growing. You can catch us on social media, on Twitter, as well as Instagram at QLAFD Podcast. That's QLAFD Podcast. With me, I have the mogul to be, Alastair Hunte. Alastair is an entrepreneur. He is also a web developer, media marketing guru. He also has something called Sculptor Body Fitness. And since this is health and wellness focused as a podcast in the background, we wanted to make sure that we did discuss something that's a little bit more insightful than just business in this case. Good friend of mine, a long time. He actually designed my first website, but I'd like to introduce him to the public. Mr. Alastair Hunte, how you doing, man?
What's going on, man? Thank you for having me on.
And then thank you for making some time, right? Busy. So I wanted to introduce you to the public, at least my constituency, because you have a lot going on, but I also respectfully wanted to kind of big you up because this season I was trying to make it a bit of a dedication to those who gave me a push. Really inspired me to do a little bit better, even refine what I was doing if that was something that was great. And for that, why would I not have you on as a part of that history? So just a little background for everyone. Photography is my media background initially. Went to University of Houston, Fine Arts College, go Cougs, just to learn photography as well as graphic design. That took me to an area where I was trying to express myself and do photography and work with models and try to be in fashion. But as you know, if you don't come recommended, it's probably not going to be good for you. So I created a portal for myself. I created an outlet where I could have, models be profiled, be accessed, be booked even. And for that, because I was tripping with no roadmap, I needed some direction on how to do it. And Alastair was recommended. I speak with him, and we made history. So today's episode, at least for the first part, is dedicated to what the industry profile was.
Man, we were so far ahead of our time. We didn't even know we were so far ahead of our time. We were just doing it. You had a concept and dream. You're like, I just need you to bring it to life. Yeah. And we were just kind of feeling our way through. People were like, what? You're not an agency, but you're featuring models. And I don't understand. You're having events, but you're not representing them. Even some of the models were like, man, this is awesome, but I have no clue how to describe it.
No idea. It's the most ambiguous agency you've ever heard of.
But it worked, though. It worked. I mean, the ability to be able to have one place for people to go was like the predecessor to social networks, social medias, even kind of some of the stuff that we're doing with Sculptor Body now, having one place for people to go where they don't have to compete against each other. Like Absolutely. Even at agencies, the models were competing against each other to be able to try and get the jobs. And there was a lot of animosity there. And then the agency promoted one versus the other, or who was the hot at the time. And you kind of sidestepped all of that, right?
Yeah, I believe that's probably the most accurate description of it. I mean, in the end, but also what you're talking about is what's happening behind the scenes as it's developing. Because, let's say you set up it's not an agency, but you put it together so that it reads that way, but you have 10 models and those 10 models are all photographed by you. So that's a supply chain conversation. So you now have a website that you maintain, putting their profiles on there. All of the content is yours. So you really don't need another photographer, so to speak. And then their profiles are essentially, you can gauge the metrics by popularity based on what they do, or where they appear, or, who features them for what. And in the end, and mindful people, this is 15 maybe years ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So video vixens were almost the thing to be, right? We needed that kind of content. We also needed regular model content because they were all shapes and sizes, all color variations. I mean, it was good to put it together, but you're talking about gauging metrics, and that is exactly this. There's no competition because the photos are the content that they're comfortable with. So therefore, if you're not comfortable going through one extra step that perhaps another one is, okay, your marketplace is based here versus her marketplace being based elsewhere. So it was a really good lesson in marketing. It really was.
Well, another place that it was ahead of its time is that you had urban and you had high end blended in one environment as well. In a time where now you have all the plus size model agencies and you have all the urban model agencies, if that's what you want to call them. And there's all these different agencies that have blossomed, but it used to just be one modeling industry, right? If you didn't have a certain look and a certain feel, it was hard for you to be able to get exposure more than just one-time thing, right? So you created an environment where people can literally come and, I don't want to say shop for the model if they want, but really they can come and find what type of model it is they're looking for in one place and one platform. And then whenever the models actually went on and maybe they signed with the agency or they went on and did bigger projects, they could say industry profiles where I got my start without feeling like it was competition versus what it is that they're currently doing, which I thought was brilliant as well. So
yeah, I agree. I think we did a good thing. And I say we because you're definitely a part of that, right? Visually, it would not have made any sense unless that was your construction. So you go into the web development side of it, and you kept asking me, like, does it have to be this dark? I'm like, I like black and silver. Like, this makes the most sense.
I don't know if it's going to work, man. This is the darkest site that I've ever created as far as, but then when we had, like, even when you moused over the pictures and them being color and the contrast, it made sense once we put it live. But again, we were just kind of figuring it out as we went along. We literally put it out there, get a little bit of feel for it, put it out, and you would have like a party or an event, and then we get some feedback and we change it all up. So
yeah, we never really changed the color. We never changed. I was stuck on that.
It was so fun being able to grow and evolve as it went along. And again, I ran across it, a couple weeks ago, and I was like, man, you could actually probably post this website live and make a few tweaks, and it would be just as relevant now, 15 years later, as it was then. That just shows how far ahead of our times that we were, right? So pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. I said it to a friend of mine. I was just talking to him about some business discussions. I'll talk to you about him offline because he's a trainer also. Nice. But when I was talking to him and he said, oh man, I remember you were doing all the modeling stuff. I said, yeah. And a mutual friend of ours actually modeled, and he was featured on the website at the time. Shout out to Charles. Charles, if you're listening, we miss you. He's in Atlanta. But nonetheless, when doing it, I just really wanted to make sure that I had something pure, right? And not necessarily anything that I've ever seen before, which is what you kept saying, like we've never done this before. But in the end, what I learned is that, well, we're getting a lot of web traffic. I knew nothing about ad space. You did. You say, hey, you can charge them quarterly, you can charge them monthly, like however you want to do it.
Everybody was figuring it out, man. It was such an undiscovered space back then, and you didn't really know what to charge to get people to keep on coming back. The fact that you had to keep them coming back and give them enough content where they would want to resubscribe or allow it to be reoccurring billing. Again, all this stuff now is just like, it's common. You do it. Like I was trying to go read an article, and then Wall Street Journal pops up. You can subscribe for this much, $1 a day, to read the rest of our, you know what I mean? So it's part of the culture now. Back then it wasn't. Getting somebody to subscribe to something online was not an easy sell, because you constantly had to do the dance on the back end to be able to entertain them enough so they would allow it to keep on billing, and allow it to be able to, you had to give them a reason to come back.
Yeah, no, true. And it really put us into, in terms of this side of the development, it put us into a situation where we didn't know what to do next to keep people coming, because we had amassed 100,000 hits a month web traffic. And I don't know where this is coming from, but it's big. And so now we can talk to the advertisers about it because you're getting 100,000 hits, which at the time, people, that was important. Now, 1 million hits on YouTube is 10 times as much. And it dwindles my nostalgia in that sense. But 15 years ago, 100,000 hits was big money.
That was a lot. And global hits. It wasn't just like 100,000 people from Houston, right?
No,
you're talking about people that we were like, what? Germany?
Japan? Germany?
How we get hits from Germany? How do we even get exposure in Germany, right?
Yeah,
so watching all that evolve taught me a lot, because again, we were learning on the back end too about how it is to be able to play with the numbers, how it is to be able to entertain the people coming back, how it is to keep traffic flowing, because we see it dip and then we'd have to figure out what to do. You were blending also virtual with live, like with your launch parties and the events that you were doing. And we actually launched, that was the first launch of a website that we did in person. Launch of a website. So people were like, what's going on? You're having a party to launch a website? Right? I've never even heard of that type of thing before, right?
Yeah. So you made me remember the first one. You made me remember the first one because I actually forgot it. I mean, no disrespect. I mean, I forgot it because I launched 2 calendar releases. Those were first calendar release to break the fire code in Houston, by the way, just if you're listening. Twice, by the way. No brag, no cap.
Or anything.
Yeah, just in case, downtown was mine. I ran it. Anyway, so, but the first party was incredible because we bought out that ballroom, and I think they had swans in the that hotel never saw anything like that.
Nothing. They didn't know what was coming. They were like, yeah, we had no clue it was going to be this. We said we didn't either.
No idea. Neither did we.
People were showing up. We were like, oh, okay, they're here.
All right. Well, shout out to DJ Styles for being my first DJ. Appreciate you, Frank, very much so. Thank you. So this in itself, man, we can do this nostalgia thing all day. This leads us up to establishing you, though. This didn't establish you, of course. You were already established when I met you, but you were a web designer and developer. Was that your core job at that point?
Man, all of my initial projects, I have much love for Houston because I'm a Dallas guy, right? So I went to school in East Texas. That's a matter of fact, that's how we met. Shout out to Roger Robinson. Yep. He's my line brother. And so we're starting a chapter of IOTA in Stephen F. Austin and Nacogdoches, Texas. Rob is from Houston at University of Houston, starting a chapter there. And so they pledged us all together. So we spent a lot of time in Houston traveling there just to be able to pledge. And that's where I started to build my Houston connections. But a lot of my initial projects, initial big projects came out of Houston, right? Because it was a whole different culture and the style that I knew of than Dallas. And there's a lot more creativity in Houston at the time when it came to like DJs and parties. And that's whenever I hooked up with Rec Shop Records and, a lot of the different DJ GT and some of these people who it is that were my core projects. Even though they weren't my biggest projects, they were the ones that I had the most fun and had the most exposure working on. And it became a network of people that were working together and not afraid to pass leads and business in between each other. Yeah. And I had never been a part of something like that before. So yeah, that was the core foundation of me as a web developer. And it really took me from just being a web developer to having a web development firm, right? Where I actually had coders that worked for me and actually had graphic designers that worked for me and had to work out different contracts and how it is to be able to work on multiple contracts at the same time. All grew from that era, man. So yeah.
That was fantastic, man. It was a pure time. And we were, probably just drinking age at that point. Like it was
running and gunning, man. I don't drink, but man, I'll be able to party with the best of them. I wish cell phones and video were a thing at that time because I would have so much stuff on so many people because I was the super guy. So the evidence that I would have would be priceless at this point.
Nah, man.
That stuff wasn't, so prominent. Yeah. So none of that exists.
I'm incredibly thankful that was not.
I feel so, it's funny because, the youth now, because I have 2 teenagers now. And so the youth now, they have it so good with all the different stuff. But I kind of feel for them because anything that you might do at any point can go global. It can go viral. Yeah. We didn't have to worry about that. So we were wilding out a little bit.
No, we were going absolutely crazy. You got to go back to Dallas. You didn't see the aftermath of what happens. Like, no, it was very fun. Very, very fun.
I tell the youth all the time because I love speaking to young entrepreneurs. And I say, this is the time where it is that you can push the boundaries of what it is that you think you can do. Because you don't have the responsibility. When you have family, whenever you have kids, and shout out to you because being a new dad, it changes everything. It completely changes everything. Like I married into 2 kids, so I became a dad what it seemed like overnight, and it completely changed how it is. And this is at 30. I didn't get married till I was 30, and so I spent the first 29 years of my life being an entrepreneur, running and gunning, working 16-hour days. You know what I mean? When the client said jump, I would jump. I would hop up. I would travel. I would drive. I would fly, and love that ability. Got to be overseas for a little bit. Love that ability to be able to do that. So do that while it is that you're young and you don't have as many things. It all seems crucial at the time. Yeah. Everything seems crucial, but it's really not. Right. So this is the time to be able to live your life and explore and to be able to really push the boundaries of being an entrepreneur and really to be able to kind of live in that high risk area that is not as easy to do once it is that you start getting older and get more responsibilities.
I 100% agree. I've refined my process now because I'm still pretty. I'm not wild like in life, but I'm very intense in intent. Like that.
Yeah.
That's what I am. So if it's something I'm doing, I am a 200-pound wolf on a leash. That's just not supposed to be there. I'm yanking that off. I'm going to do whatever it is that I need to do. And back to it. Did you start the your process of being an entrepreneur? Did you begin that as being a web developer for another company, or did you do it all on your own?
No, I did it all on my own. So, well, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 13. Always had businesses. I started my first business at 13. So from 13 moving forward, always did some kind of side business on the side. I started off repairing computers and PCs before the internet. Man, this makes me sound old. Before the internet and before you could just order parts online, right? You had to order them out of catalogs. So you better hope it works because there was no sending it back, right? And I did that. And my dad being my biggest supporter, he helped me to get a business card. He helped me to start the business. Of course, I couldn't do it in my name at 13, but helped me to and he had never had a business. He always had legal side hustles. Like he was the guy that had all the stuff that you needed in the back of your truck. So they would go to him and say, "Hey, Al, it's raining." And he's like, "Oh, I got an umbrella." He was a find a need, fill a need guy, right? Okay. I mean, everything in the back of the red truck that I still have, right? Awesome. His red truck, he had a camper top on it and he had everything that you needed in the back, working out of Dallas, right? So I always saw him as that person that was always hustling and grinding, and we never were in need because his whole theory was, if we need something, I just go out and create it, right? Sure. And so very much taking that on from him, but he was also working on the corporate side. He worked for the union for Southwestern Bell, so he had to work and talk about working in a good old boy system as the first Black vice president of the union. He had to work 3 times harder than everybody else. Sure. So he missed a lot of stuff because he had to work in order to be able to provide. And I told him one day, I was like, "Look, I don't want to ever work as hard as you." And he said, "Well, the only way you can do that is if you own your own business." And that seed was planted from that moment. And that was it. You know, I was like, I gotta have my own business. So I started the computer business, and then that went through it to as I went into graphic design, and graphic design became a thing. Then I started to do that, worked at the computer lab at the college, then got a salary job working for Bell South. And that's where it is that I started learning the IT and the server side of things and the customer service side and that desktop support side of things. But web development wasn't really a field. Like even whenever I got my master's degree, we were the first web development master's degree because it wasn't a field that you can actually make money off. It was just something that you did on the side, or you worked for a corporation that happened to have web development in. You couldn't have just a web development job by itself. So that was my first taste of building a website for that corporation. My junior year in college was the first big level web development that I had, because I was in charge of creating the whole intranet and creating the website that was going to be front facing for everybody else as well. Wow. I learned a lot of stuff through the process and getting paid salary for it, so why not? But then I started my web development company on the side. Actually, when I was working for Bell South, they needed to create, that was when Flash was big, right? So everything was, even Industry Profile used Flash, right?
Yeah, it did. It did.
And so that was my niche in the web development world, was being able to create these dynamic Flash websites that were interactive and that you actually, you didn't just go to the website, you interacted it with. Like I remember DJ GT's website, whenever you actually went to it, it had turntables. And when you switched the tracks, it would actually take the turntable off and put the next record on before it played the next track. And people would just go and play with that kind of stuff because it was just fun to interact with. So we created those kind of things. Rec Shop Records site, you know, you had all the different artists, and as it came on, their picture came up and it actually put it in a CD in the CD player. You know what I mean? So that kind of stuff is where I initially carved my niche at, and Bell South hired me to do something like that. And we started a web development company because we had to have a company for them to hire us on the side. Okay. So it was find a need, fill a need. That's really what it's all about, man. So.
And then to make sure you're covered and not just being salaried, now you're being contracted.
Exactly. And we had to make it look like it was that we weren't double dipping, right? So we had to create a completely separate company that they were subcontracting out to us that I could do separate from, and it didn't fall underneath my position, which is IT guy. This is web development, something totally different. And that's how we started it. I started with the guy who knew more than I did, but was really, really lazy. And so I didn't realize that until after we started the company, and I was doing all the work, and he had all the knowledge of how to do it, but I was actually doing all the work. And then so the spinoff of that was started a web development company with another girl who it is that I worked in the computer lab with. She was the coder, I was the designer, and then spun off of that and created Pizarro Productions, which was the first web development company and started
Wow.
my brand and all of that kind of stuff. That's when I really started focusing on branding and creating
Sure.
a brand that people would recognize and a logo that people would recognize whenever I put it on something. And that was the beginning of everything.
So if you haven't figured this out yet, since I did say it at first, but if you're not listening, listen now. Marketing, branding, guru. Okay. I don't know where you can go into the Webster's dictionary versus real-time definition of what a guru is, but I definitely define that for my own personal sense as a person who has done enough and has enough empirical evidence of success in order to explain to you what is the right path to take. That's generally what that means to me. But a person who is a success coach has to have more successes than failures. Otherwise, it'd just be a failure coach.
And willing to keep on failing your way through things, man. I mean, it's a constant learning. Look, people who it is that are constantly honing their craft, like people who it is that are never satisfied with where it is that they're at and their level of knowledge, those are the ones that are successful. Those are people that I look to be my mentors, are the ones who it is that are constantly looking to be able to up their game. I remember watching Oprah's masterclass, right? She did that masterclass series, which was just brilliant. I mean, getting the top of the top people in all the fields and interviewing them about what made them successful blew my mind. But she did a masterclass on herself. Only Oprah could do a masterclass on herself, right? And I remember her talking.
She has a name on everything,
right? It's like the first person I'm going to put on a masterclass is me. Why not, right? But I love listening to it because I love listening to how it is that successful people like navigated all where you learn is where they overcome all the obstacles that they went through in the past. Not the big success that they currently have and being a gazillionaire like she is. Like, where was it that she had to like overcome and where was it that she struggled? And she put it all on the table in that masterclass. And I love what she said. She's like, whenever it is that, Donahue came out and he's challenged me and Montel Williams came out and Ricky Lake and all these people who were challenging our number one spot came out, it got me excited because that just made us make sure that we were 5 steps ahead of them. You're like, how is it that you never were afraid of them taking over? It's like, well, they had to play catch up with us. And as long as it is that they were playing catch up with us and we were taking it to that next level, we knew we were going to be number one. And that one time that Donahue passed her for the number one spot, and then she actually fell to number 2, she's like, okay, well, it just means that we weren't stepping our game up enough. So now we just need to get back and do what we do. We don't need to become them. We just need to get better at what it is that we do so that way we can get that spot back. And she did. And where's Donahue now? And where's Oprah now? Right? So it's just, and so that was very inspiring to me because that's really the model and the formula that I've taken is like, how can I constantly up my game and really hone the craft that I'm at and I have a passion for it. So if you have a passion for something and you're constantly working on honing your craft, those are the 2 keys, I think, and 2 factors for success.
Give me the year that you went.
Oh, over to Finland. So it would have been 2008, 2009, somewhere around there.
Okay. So just so I can platform this, the way it went down for me, because I'm sitting in a developer seat for, the website and trying to figure out where to go. And then you message me and saying, hey, I'm going to be busy for a while. So, you're going to, whatever you need to do, we need to do it like right now.
Like right now.
And I said, well, what exactly is it that you're talking about? And also people just to understand that, yes, we have a friendship, but this was never the way that I work. I don't work on favors. If someone has something, if you're good at it, you get paid for it. Shout out to Joker, Heath Ledger, rest in peace. But that's the way this works. I contact him. He says, I have a business. I respect the fact he has a business. And I said, well, send me the invoice. We'll figure out what to do. Because if I couldn't
over that. Wait, stop there for a second, because people have to be able to understand this. This is a huge thing. Like, you have friendships with people, you build relationships with people, and then you do business with people. And you got to keep those separate. You got to be willing to pay for what it is that you want, right? Exactly. And pay for quality and not cut corners. And that's I respect you from day one for that aspect of it, because so many people, as you develop relationships with them, then all of a sudden they want you to be able to come down on your pricing. They don't want to be able to pay you, do me a favor. And that's the worst way to be able to do business. So I respected that part of that. We developed a friendship that was over here, but it was always hey, this is business. Same thing if I need you for photography or anything else. I was like, look, dude, give me a price. So that way it is I can roll it into the client contract and we call it what it is, right? There was never any question about the value of what you did and the value of what I did. So that's important. Okay. You can move
I
on.
agree.
I still want to. You kind of smoothed over. I was like, whoa, that's a big one.
I really appreciate it, but again, that was the way I was built. That's the way I was raised. That's the way my father implemented those ethics into me. No one. And here's the caveat to that. If I don't want to charge you, that's the gift, right? But don't come to me as though I'm not going to ask you for the money. Like, this is what I do for a living. I have invoices to prove this is what I do for a living. You're asking me to stop making money so that I can actually start on your project. And, and if I love you, then that's fine. But I'm going to say, don't worry about this. I'm going to do it for you.
Yeah, me investing into somebody, which I always looked at as an investment into either their future or whatever else, or me investing into a relationship is different than you asking me to be able to give you something.
Right. Totally. So let's not harp on it, but that is important to me. It was important to you. That's how I started this. I just no favors, no investors, just business. So nonetheless, then you tell me, okay, hey, I'm going to be really busy. And I'm like, what are you going to be doing that we have to rush on all of the concepts now? Because I haven't even finished shooting half of them. And he said, well, got a contract with, and I'm going to have to be overseas for a while. Now,
actually, it was a contract with the artists in Finland. Finland just where located at, right? Okay. I was like, and that's how I told you where it is. You were like, Finland. I was like, the place where they make phones, right? Because that's how I knew about it. I couldn't have told you where Finland was on a map before it is that they told me that they needed me to come to Finland. I had no clue. I'm a Texas guy, traveled all over the U.S. The islands is as far out of the country I had been before that. Right. But then they're like, we need you to come to Finland. I was like, Finland. Sounds familiar.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I was like, yeah, I got to go overseas. It was crazy, man. It was just crazy how it all happened. A girl that I went to that helped me to co-write my book, and that I actually went and got my master's degree, knew a guy in Finland who it is that's from Kentucky.
Okay.
And
go figure.
And one of the top Black R&B singers in Finland, in Europe, period. And he wanted an American firm to do his website. He didn't want a Finnish firm to do his website because at the time there wasn't any strong Finnish developers that were really doing it the style that he wanted. And so we got on a call, and he's like, hey, my label wants to fly you over here to talk about doing it. And can you be here next month? And it was December, and Christmas is a big deal for my family. I had just went full time. I actually had just left my corporate position and decided I wanted to go full time into my web development business. Had to move back in with the parents. Now, this is me 8 years of being out the house, having my own house. And I had to make some decisions, right? And I had to make a blind leap. Corporate was not working out. It was at the point where it is that I was going to leave, or there was going to be some fights, right? And so, and my web development business was going well enough, and I had saved up enough money, and I cashed out my 401k, which at the time my accountant was screaming at me. After that, all the 401ks went bust. So that was a blessing in itself, right?
Yeah, the recession,
my 401k, right? And moved back home because I was like, I'm never home anyways. I'm just going to sleep here. So why get this big fancy apartment? I wanted to make my financial footprint. One of my mentors said, make your financial footprint as small as possible if you're going to go full time, which is some of the best advice that he could have given me. So he said, yes, move back in with your parents. Yes, make sure it is that you don't have an expensive car. Cut back on all the Netflix had just come out, and I thought I needed all that stuff. And he's like, cut back on all of that and just grind.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. And then the next week I get a call, like right after I moved in, it was about a month later, I get a call saying, hey, we need you to come overseas. And if I had been in the corporate job, I wouldn't have been able to do it. If I had had a fancy apartment and a fancy car and a big car note, I wouldn't have been able to do it. But because it is that I really didn't have anything holding me back, I was just like, let me call up all my clients and let them know that we're going to be working remote. Because I'm about to go all the way on the other side of the world. and different time zone, different 20 hours of darkness in the middle of winter, negative temperatures. Dude, my Texas blood was not even prepared for Finland whenever it is I hit the ground there. But it was an amazing experience. I stayed there for 10 months. Yeah.
10 months. That was my next question. Like, how long were you there? You were gone for a while. It felt like a year.
It's supposed to be and really I was on a visa, a 90-day visitor's visa. So that was going to be the limit of my contract, right? I was only planning on going over for a couple of weeks and then coming back. And then a couple of weeks turned into a month, and a month turned into 2 months. And then all of these people saw what I was doing with the branding, because we completely rebranded him from the ground, like everything, logo, websites, flyers, everything. I mean, we created a whole brand for him, which nobody was doing over there. So when all these other artists that he works with saw what it is I was doing, they're like, man, can you do the same thing for us? But I couldn't, because I was an immigrant working illegally. Like, this is only supposed to be like an undercover one contract. Right. So then I applied to get into the country. They took my passport and they took all of everything it is that would allow me to be able to leave, and said, you wait here. And that's I was there for 10 months, kind of playing the waiting game, trying to get in with all this money on the table that I couldn't touch. And it was very interesting times.
You were able to eventually get the money though, right?
No, I got sick of the guys. Like, I can't wait anymore. At the 10-month point, I went to the consulate, the American consulate, and they're like, look, the chance of you getting in this country and starting a business here is really, really slim. And at that point, I was like, I'm out. And then when I get back to the US and Finland, people are very pro Finland. So if you live there, if you're there, their handshake, a very old school handshake and a smile. So when I went back home, I was like, okay, I'm back home. I could do these contracts. They were like, yeah, but you're not here.
Not there. Yeah.
Yeah, we want somebody here. So
that's two things that are really important though. That I relate to it, but I wanted to highlight those two things. Number one, a friend of mine knows a tailor. He referred me to the tailor. The tailor comes in because I'm built like the letter Y. So like some things need to be taken in, right? So I meet this guy. This gentleman's from Thailand, but he's Indian. All right. So he's a first generation Thai via India. And he travels around the world tailoring, just custom tailored suits, and doing a fantastic job, because I actually did the math on it. You know, if you're charging like, I don't know, somewhere arbitrarily $1,500 per order, right? And you're going to service 10 orders a day per city that you're in. You're getting it. And he's going around, the country. Then he goes out of the country and goes to Europe and all these other areas before he even gets back to Thailand to do the orders. I said, Ray, you're a millionaire. He says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm just going to do as he's measuring me, I said, I'm just going to do the math real quick, just to make sure that you understand what I'm saying. But I'm paying you in American currency, not Thai baht. So if I'm giving you this money and I'm the 10th person you saw today and you're here over the weekend, you're probably going to make 30 grand American before you leave Houston, you know? Oh, you're very good at math. Yeah, no, the question I'm really asking is, why am I not a tailor? This is what I'm trying to figure out. That's one. But the other part, though, is the way the handshake deals work in Finland seem to be very similar to the business deals that happen in China, because it requires a warm handoff, it requires a transfer, and those relationships don't die. But if you're further away, they become a little bit more strained. But they still try to keep them. They're very dedicated in keeping the relationship.
You know, I found that's outside of the U.S., that's a lot of the different cultures are very much like that too. It's only here where we're so contract heavy, and because we have to be, right? Because there's so much litigation that goes on in the U.S. that doesn't really exist as much outside of there. Like, you had to sit down and you had to be able to go to the bar with them. They wanted to socialize and they wanted to get to know you before you landed the contract. And because it is I don't drink, then I had to either out eat them. That's how I became fluffy, right? Is I had to be able to either out eat them, or I had to be able to prove that I was trustworthy in another way, through relationships, through whatever it is. And so that's where I got really good at the whole negotiation and building relationships and the speed of trust and making sure it is that happened. Luckily, I had already honed my skills in the US here, so it was easy over there. Because they get the liquid courage in them and they become super friendly. Finland people are very, like, they don't talk. They look very serious until they get out. And when they get out, it's everybody's their buddy, right? So I learned how it is to be able to navigate that. And I love the culture, and I love the people over there. Whenever it was over there, it was the weather, man. I left before it is the next round of -13 and 30 inches of snow hit. No thanks. Whenever they told me I wouldn't have a chance, I was like, all right. But the summers, 80 degrees, 20 hours of daylight, everybody walks every place. I got in the best shape of my life just by the foods don't have any artificial stuff in them at all. And so all of that stuff I actually loved whenever it was over there. But yeah, I was homesick. I was ready to come back home. And then I came home and I ate. First thing the place I went to is a soul food place, and I ate all the food I was missing. And that's how it is. I got fluffy, and that led into my fitness thing. I got fluffy, comfortable, married, and I knew I had to do something about it.
So let's talk about Sculptor Body Fitness in one tick. Since we are travel biased, and this is associated in basically 4 categories for the podcast: travel, business, health and wellness, which clearly we're about to get into, and then also entrepreneurship and basic rabbit trails, because I go all over the place. The way you describe Finland, I've always kind of bounced around an idea of what I wanted to do, but for my birthday, since I was born in the wintertime, I always kind of wanted to chase the Northern Lights. I only have 2 things left on my bucket list, honestly, and that's one of them. Yes. And I'm going to. It's just a matter of where I was going to go. The closest to where I got to where you were was Tromsø, Norway. I was going to go to Tromsø instead, because it's just beautiful and it's a quiet village, and sometimes I just want to be left alone. So that's what I wanted to do, but I never really considered Finland. However, a close friend of the family was a singer, and she was in Helsinki. They brought her in for Helsinki for the longest period of time. Yep. And she kept telling me, you need to go, you need to go. Too cold. And I know it's too cold because I was in Moscow and it was way too cold.
Way too cold.
I'm going to go further north than that. Like, why don't I just go see Santa if that's the case? So,
I had no clue, man, when I hit there. But Helsinki, it's like Helsinki is like the New York of Finland. So there's other thing I like about Helsinki is there's a lot of different cultures and melting pot. Sweden would be even better place because it's even more of a melting pot than Finland is. Like Sweden it tends to be like a party entertainment type of city when you talk about the Nordic countries, because I got a chance to be able to go over there. That was one of the few places I could go without a passport. So that's why I got to go over to Sweden. It was right next door, right? I wanted to go to Russia. They were like, without a passport, are you crazy? Yeah, no, not a good idea. Not a good play at all. Right?
And let me tell you from experience, nor did you want to go.
I was like, I'm right here. Like, I'm literally right next door to Russia and I can't go. And they're like, no. Not at all.
You can't. And it ain't all this cracked up to be, believe me. Let me just tell you.
I watched too many movies, too many hacker movies, and I just wanted to be able to experience it. And they're like, the hacker movies are really mild. The fact that you're basing what you know on a hacker movie should tell you everything that you need to know, right? He said, nothing you want to play with as a African American going into Russia without a passport. These are all recipes for failure.
So I was detained for well over 3 hours in Russia. It was more like 6 maybe. And then even taken out of airport as well. I'll probably, over the course of this season, I'll probably say the story 2 or 3 times, but for you, because I'm telling you, Russia isn't the place. The reason why I did it though, it wasn't essentially. It's not a bomb, if that's what you think, like it was, and I don't have an ability to not talk crap when.
Yeah. I remember that, Hassan, man.
I've tried. I'm working on it, people.
You've grown a little bit since then. Back then it was like, look. I remember the hotel when we had that party. They were like, look, this is not gonna be okay. You're like, I paid you, so we're gonna do whatever we want to do. It's like basically until you can give my money back, we're turning up.
We're turning up. If you don't like it, then fine. We just won't do it again. But we're doing it tonight.
Oh my goodness, that was funny.
I've tried to grow, but I'm not wrong here, and I know I'm not wrong. So I'm going to defend myself. I mean, that's what we were taught. Like, if you're not wrong, at least defend yourself. Yeah. And it just, they took a lot longer. Still didn't go tour the country. I still didn't get out to go do that.
Debbie Downer a little bit.
Womp womp. But nonetheless, okay. So on task. This has been fantastic information, and I really, really appreciate you taking the time to really discuss the lessons in this. But the story is so interesting because you jumped off the porch an entrepreneur. Like you actually got employed after you made yourself more viable to employers, right? On your own. Yeah. And that's a hardcore story, man. I mean, that's beautiful.
I had to do that stint in corporate. People say, hey, do you ever regret, leaving corporate? Because I never turned back after that. I mean, it was one of those, I burned the bridge in a big way. And I was like, I had to make it happen. Right. And whatever it is, I opened it up and was able to follow the spirit and, just take that jump. You hear it all the time, but it wasn't easy, but that was it. That was the beginning of because I learned how it is to be able to do business. I had to stay up till 2 a.m. because there's a 12-hour time difference to do business with all my clients here. I wasn't bringing in income when I was in Finland. So all my income came from my US clients that I had built before it is that I left, right? So I'm
Sure.
still doing the same contracts and still everything else. So that means I got to stay up till I got a Skype number before Skype numbers were big. There was no Zoom. So everybody thought, same number. I still got the same number, which is so funny. The Skype number then, everybody thought that I was still in the US unless I let them know, like you, that I was gone. Because I was still working the same hours. I still had the same US phone number. It just rang via Skype on my computer over there in Finland. And then I figured out how it is to connect it to my Finnish phone so it would ring on my phone. And so I could take the call and be like, hey, Alastair, they had no clue that I was, overseas. I just learned a different way of leveling up my business. It's still landing contracts while I'm across the world in the US because I couldn't do business there in Finland. Well, at least not in risk getting deported. Like I truly learned how it is. I had a green card, but theirs is blue. I had to go check in, at least twice a week. And so I really had to, just like an immigrant here in the US, I gained a whole nother respect for the immigration process because I was that. Here I am. This is like a 98% Anglo country. So I am the minority. I'm having to go to immigration. I'm having to check in. I'm looking over my shoulder everywhere I go because I have no passport. I have a little piece of paper with a rubber seal that looks like somebody could have just bought at Staples that said that this, I'm processing my application. That was the only proof I had to be there. And even like with you, whenever I was leaving Finland, now here I am 10 months on a 90-day visa, 10 months in the country. And I'm nervous walking up there because I'm like, they even told me, they're like, look, you can show them the piece of paper, but if they call us up, we can't really help you if it is, and when you're leaving the country on your own risk, going out there. And I've never been so nervous. And the lady did one of those, look at me and look at this about 25 times. Like, it's like, you're way past your visa. And I explained the story and I'm like over explaining because I'm nervous. I'm like, look, I just want to go home. I've been gone this whole entire time. She must have felt bad for me because she just finally stamped to let me through, but it could have turned really bad really quickly at any point. So I was definitely blessed to be safe while I was there, being able to come back. But it gave me a global view and a global vision when I came back to US. Now I could play on a global field. So I was ready. I went after the big stuff. I mean, the first contract I went after whenever I got back was the Dallas Cowboys Stadium website. I'm going up against the top firms that I look up to in the US. Like I had no business bidding on that contract, but I was like, I gotta go for it. I need to see where this is going to be the top firms in the US. I need to see if I can get to the finalists with the head of the head. And there was 100 firms that applied for that development position. And then they said, congratulations, you made it to the top 50. And I was like, yes, I'm in the top 50 US. And they said, congratulations, you made it to the top 25. I was like, what? It's the top 25. And it was all smoke and mirrors. Like my Pizarro Productions website made it look like we're this big corporation, but it was really two developers in an office in Oak Cliff. Like we're right on the edge of Oak Cliff. We're right there at Oak Cliff, right across from the cemetery, right? Like 2 blocks away with some shady stuff going on if you went 2 blocks into Oak Cliff, if you know anything about Dallas, right? And but we were put on this facade, like, let's go for it. Then we got to the point where I got down to the top 25 and they said, we want to do site tours of your facilities. And I was like, well, crap. And they allowed us to go on the site tours of the other companies that were bidding against. So I went on the first one, and it's a company that I always loved their work. And he's like, okay, here's the green room where we keep all of our coders. And then this is the red room where we keep all of our graphic designers. And this is where we do our storyboarding. And it's this big facility. And I was like, let me tap out, because if they come to my office, I'll be like, okay, first of all, you got to walk past the dogs that people raise for fighting in Oak Cliff, up the stairs, and then let me take you into my one office. Now that section over there, that's where my one developer sits. That section over there, one designer, and this is my desk, all in one room. So congratulations, did we get the contract? So I tapped out, but to be able to make it to the top 25 at that time, in my mind, was just more confirmation that we were playing way too small, right? And it expanded my mindset to be able to A, know my worth, like know my value, but B, to go after, why not? Why not go after the big stuff and then just figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, the worst that they can say is no, but it also, in the process of that, allows you to look at yourself, not yourself as a person, but yourself as an entity, and to say, okay, do I compare to what they're looking for?
If I could deliver at the same level that you could deliver, like I never bid on stuff that I knew I couldn't deliver at. I mean, I knew that we would have to figure it out. We'd have to hire some more people on, but I knew what they were asking for. I would either have to figure out or develop. It was going to take us to the next level, and just having that kind of portfolio piece, the money that they were offering, everything else like that. I felt like I was at the glass ceiling of where it is that I wanted to go. And I feel like getting a big contract would be able to do that for me. All right. So, I mean, if you go to alastairhunt.com and it's ALASTAIR, hunt with an E.com, that links to all my projects that I'm doing. I mean, so that's the best way to be able to get in contact with me. So if you're looking to be coached to be able to get healthy, you reach out to me, I plug you into the system. If you're a health and fitness side and you're looking at plugging into the system, reach out to me and I plug you into the system. But that's going to link you to Sculptor Body Fitness. That's going to link you to my consulting business that I do for web development and consulting, the podcast that I'm a part of, the Techie and the Cowboy as well. I mean, Hassan was like, what don't you do? I have so many different things, but that's part of the passion of being an entrepreneur and the freedom of being an entrepreneur. It's like, if I see something and I realize I have the ability to be able to make an impact in that area, and I want to make sure that I'm going to be the best person I could be in that area. I don't like doing stuff halfway, and that's where me and Hassan got along really well too. It's like, we don't like just going in and half-cocked and doing stuff. Like, if we're going to do it, we're going to push the boundaries of it, and we're going to execute at a big level. So all the different things that I'm in have been things that have come up either as passion projects or things that I'm involved in, and that alastairhunt.com is the best place to go to.
There is a lot of information on his website. There's a lot of information that we've covered. Honestly, I might just make this a part 1 and part 2, but there's a lot that we've covered in terms of business, in terms of the history of our business continuity, but then also for health and wellness purposes. There's a lot of information that he has. There's a lot that he has created so that he can share that information with people. So we are talking about an entrepreneur, but we're also talking about a health and wellness coach. We're talking about a marketing coach, a consultant in business. There's a lot that you've done in a very short period of time to refine it. I mean, you're not even at your midlife crisis yet, and you've kind of knocked off all this stuff. It's a good thing, but it's a dangerous place to be, because once you realize that you've done it, you're like, well, what else can you do?
Right. Like, constantly reinvent yourself. Like I said, getting better at your craft and honing your craft. There's so much more I want to be able to accomplish, to be able to leave my impact on this earth. That's my overall goal with everything I do. Is like, how can I leave this earth a better place? And how can I leave like a MLK impact? You know what I mean? Like an impact that's continuing to grow as a legacy after it is that I left here, to do better for this world. So that's my overall vision with everything.
That's awesome, man. All right. Well, listen, so you have been on with Qualified, the podcast. This is Hassan. This is Alastair Hunte, marketing guru, tech guru, coach, wellness. He's got a fitness story that you would not believe. You should really take the time out to engage with him and listen to it directly. alastairhunt.com. I will put that into the description. But again, remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. Also, place your comments into the fields. We are looking at them. You can catch us on Spotify and Stitcher, as well as in social media, Instagram and Twitter at QLAFD podcast. I'm your host, Hassan. Thanks a lot, guys.